Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Black Woman Leave America live podcast show. Really excited to come to you live so you can ask us questions, comments in real time. Many of you have been watching the replays. Thank you for that. You can certainly still comment, ask questions, all of that, and we do reply back. So you'll see that if you do send us comments, you ask us questions. A lot of you ask about the different presenters that we've had on. Also share different topics that you would like us to talk about. We definitely respond back. Some of you have been binge watching. Thank you.
Yeah.
I love it. We love it. I've gotten several comments about that. I think that is so dope as a binge watcher. So I love that. So today we're going to be talking about something that's certainly near and dear to my heart. And we have a phenomenal guest, and we may have a few guests that join us as well. But we're going to be talking about leaving those toxic work environments. How many of y'all know? Been there, done that, got the t-shirt, going through it right now. So if this relates to you in any way, make sure you tune in. It's still early here on the East Coast. We know there's a whole lot of other places that we're rolling with, but here on the East Coast, it is early, so you can still grab your coffee, grab your tea, you somewhere else, grab your wine, grab whatever you got to drink, sit down, let's talk about it. So Miss Jessica, hey host, how are you?
Are we doing that? Hey, host. I am good. Running as usual. Swear, kids do not listen. But super excited for today's episode, and I've been looking forward to just chatting with you all for a little while now. So I'm super excited to sit back, relax, and listen to the conversation as you two kind of go into it.
Look, she said as we two. She
I,
is just
I gotta manage the chat. I gotta, so I'm gonna be. I'll be joining in, of course, but also know that I'm the tech support, so I'll be doing all the back end stuff and making sure that everybody that is in the chat is also involved in the conversation. So, but we're super excited to have our guest today. I'll pass the mic back over to you, Ava Laura, to do a formal introduction.
Well, thank you. Yes, I love the boundary. She just showed y'all how to set a boundary. Okay. Miss Tiffany, thank you. Welcome back. So she was with us for our, I don't know, I guess it was a forum summit, really cool event that we had that you can certainly go back and watch, Nurturing. What was the name of it? It was a really cool name that I don't remember right now, but it was about really around mental health and well-being and traveling abroad. Lots of great speakers, lots of great perspectives and conversations. So you can definitely go back and watch that as well. So Tiffany is back to join us to talk about this topic, and just tell our viewers, for those who don't know you, who don't know this aspect, right, because we didn't really talk about this, but tell them a little bit about yourself, and just a little bit about your journey in terms of how you relate to leaving that toxic work environment and then saying, you know what, I'm out of here, let me go.
Look, I'm a start with the beginning with the introduction. So, hey everybody, my name is Dr. Tiffany Lachelle Smith. I guess I'll talk about where I am now, and then I'll kind of go backwards into, where I was when I was working in the States. So I'm actually checking in from the United Arab Emirates, Ras Al Khaimah, which is about an hour outside of Dubai. And I am the senior research fellow at the Sheikh Saud bin Sagar Al Qasimi Foundation for Policy Research. So my background is in education. So my leaving of a toxic environment had everything to do with the U.S. education system, which basically catapulted into my international career abroad. So I taught in the States for 2 years. And then after I left the States, I went and taught in Casablanca, Morocco for 2 years. And then after that, I came here to Abu Dhabi, taught here for 2.5 years. And then I woke up one day and decided to leave my job in the middle of the school year and take myself right on back home. So it's funny because, even when you're talking about Black women leaving America, I
Mhm.
don't necessarily consider myself having left even now, because, if it's me going home to see family, if it's
Mhm.
me, going home after I quit my job, I went back home and started my PhD program. And then 6 years later, I ended right back here in
Wow.
a different emirate. So, I mentioned this before, but James Baldwin came up with this phrase that he described himself as a transnational commuter.
Mhm.
Sorry, a transatlantic commuter, and I've kind of modified the phrase, describing myself as a transnational commuter, because even when I'm here, America's with me. I have a blue
Mhm.
passport, American passport, and then when I'm home, it's like you just kind of this shifting of identities. So
Mhm.
I'm never leaving. I'm just commuting between the two. So I'm super excited to talk about the conversation today, because it's one of those things like teacher attrition, turnover, all those things are so near
Woo!
my heart. So you are talking to a person that I'm gonna waterfall and let it all out.
And it's so interesting, because even my story, we came up with this topic, one, because, I see it so much with my clients in toxic work environments, and really navigating those waters and trying to figure out what they want to do, if they want to stay, if they want to quit, if they want to go somewhere else, if they want to start a business, right? Looking at their options. And my own journey really started from leaving a toxic work environment as well. Now, I didn't decide to leave the country, but I did decide to leave the workforce, so to speak, and start my own business.
Yeah,
And so I know what that's um all the beauty, right? All the amazing blessings that can come from that. I also know the journey as well, in terms of your identity, in terms of trying to figure yourself out. You work so hard to get to this place, and what does that look like leaving, right? And what are you going to do now, and where are you going to go? And is it going to be better somewhere else, or is it just going to be the same old, right? Like all of these questions, that we have to navigate, and having the courage, I think,
absolutely.
to say, you know what, I'm just going to leave it all, and this is a time where I get to recreate myself, and change my life and do something that I've wanted to do, and now I have the opportunity to do it. So talk about that for you, like what that looked like, because again, you left, right?
Yeah,
And I know you go back and forth, which I also think is cool. I think that's our prerogative, right? Like that's an option. That's what this is about. It's not about leaving per se, but it's about understanding that you have options. And in
absolutely.
order to live life on your own terms, you need to exercise those options. But first, you got to know what those options are. So I'm sure
Exactly.
there's lots of women out there, right, who may have thought about leaving and said, you know what, I'm ready for something new. I am ready to do the things that I've always wanted to do, but I've been putting them on hold for whatever reasons, because I am tied to this job or this particular area or whatever. And so I don't know how to navigate those waters. So what happened with you? Like, how did that come about?
Yeah. Oh, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So, basically, when I was in higher education, right, when I decided, I'll start with when I decided to go to college, because I come from a small town in Southern Illinois.
Mhm.
And of course, I am first gen everything. So, first gen to go to college, first gen to go and get my master's, first gen to leave the country, first gen to go and get my PhD, all of that. So when I made the decision to even pursue higher ed, especially when it came to my family, they had this idea that they wanted to keep me safe. So it was, go to the community college up the street. It's okay. You need to stay here. And I decided that, I wanted to leave. And even when I was, talking about leaving, it wasn't, oh, I want to pursue higher education so I can become a doctor or a lawyer. This is going to be something that is, you know, building my career. It was, I saw college as an opportunity to leave my hometown. and
Absolutely.
I wanted to leave. I wanted to leave. And it's not, one of those things where I'm like bad mouthing where I'm from. I'm from Alton, Illinois, which is across the bridge from St. Louis. But it was just one of those things where I felt like it was too small, right? The
Mhm.
capacity of who I felt I was, it was too
Mhm.
small to build that, and to mold that. Um, but even the molding of wanting to be something bigger started with my study abroad experience, or at least when I had an imagination about what that bigness was my study
Mhm.
abroad experience when I went to South Africa. And that was my first like little touch of the international piece. I still don't know. I mean, I've thought about it so many times. I don't know where the inkling to study abroad came from. But it was one day I decided to go into the study abroad office, and, I ended up looking at some pamphlets, talking to the advisor, and it resulted in an education as an agent for social change program to go and experience South Africa. So
Wow.
South Africa was just a game changer because, Black was the default. And I mentioned this in our last podcast that it
Mhm.
was just, this whole idea of in the States, you're a minority. In
Mhm.
the States, you are Black. In the States, you come from this lineage of slaves and deficit and, all of this stuff, that we experience as Black Americans. But then you go to South Africa, you got Black folks on billboards, money, different
Mhm.
positions, hair care products, food, everywhere. And it just completely changed my mind about, what the world was, not even just America. So it was that inkling, but here I am in an early childhood studies program where oftentimes when I'm in any of my classrooms, I'm the only Black person in there, maybe one or two of us. And, at that time that I'm doing my practicum hours, going into these schools in the surrounding districts, all that stuff, it was just, I would see a Black teacher here and there. Um,
Mhm.
or if even when it was like a classroom full of, Black and brown students in front of them, it was always a white teacher. So here I
Mhm.
am being exposed to, the American education system in Illinois. I'll be very
Mhm.
specific about that. It was just like I didn't fit.
Yeah.
But there I was pursuing this early childhood degree. So I knew I was going into the classroom. So I'll fast forward and basically say that, after I graduated, I ended up back at home working in a school district, which was about 30 minutes outside of my hometown. And the first year was fine. I mean, those of us who are in education, there's a lot of things because there's statistics out there that basically say, when novice teachers enter the profession, they're going to leave within the first 4 years because,
Oh, wow.
teacher attrition, yeah, teacher attrition is a thing, especially in America. And, you have scholars that kind of present these findings as far as why teachers are leaving. And generally,
Mhm.
not even white
Mhm.
teachers, Black teachers, but just teacher
Right.
attrition in general. Um, and for me, when I went in my first year, it's just hard. Many of the things that you
Yeah.
learn in higher education doesn't necessarily prepare you for the classroom, even with those practicum hours. Like you're still under the guidance of a veteran teacher. So when you're put into this classroom, it's just hard. Your first couple of years is going to be hard. And hopefully you have some type of support, to help you navigate parents and students and state tests and curriculum and all of this stuff that is what the US education system is. So that's like the professional piece of it, but then I can layer that with this idea that let me speak for myself, as a Black American, the
Mhm.
mantra of the Black community is go to school so you can get your good job.
Absolutely.
I went to school, I got my good job,
Yeah.
and I'm still living with my mom in my childhood bedroom, and that's all I could afford, right? I could afford a car, a
Mhm.
used car at that, to get back and forth to work. I had student loans.
Yep.
I had some credit card debt because that's the first thing that they offer you when you enroll in your first class. They
They
also offer
do.
you some credit cards. So I just, kind of looked at the hardships that I was experiencing in my professional life and the hardships that I was experiencing in my personal life. And I was
Mm.
like, if this
This
is
ain't
what
it.
right, right, like
I
literally,
ain't signed up for this.
if this is what I'm supposed to do for the next 5 years, I'm not good. I literally could not afford it. And this is at the time, I mean, I'm going to be very transparent, where I was making maybe 30, 32 a year. So with that mantra, go to school, get your good job, I did both. And I was like, well, maybe I need some more school. So I decided to enroll in my master's program, and I'm teaching during the day, taking classes at night. And it was just, and over the summers. And I'm just like, okay, I got some, how do you call it? The teacher vouchers where you can go and, get your tuition paid for, all that stuff. I was trying to finagle the system, but it wasn't working. So it was that second year, and this is when like the toxicity comes in, because basically in my position, this is 2009, 10, 11, where, I mean, across the states, the profession in itself were pink slipping teachers, like, they were losing their jobs just because budget, this budget, that, we have to reduce this, reduce that. And a lot of teachers were losing their jobs, especially those who hadn't been in the profession for 3 years, because that's when you get that tenure. Like, you can't lose your job at that point. Yeah. So after so many years, you're good. And in Illinois, I mean, at the time that I was teaching, it was 3. And at 3 years, you have to have like some type of, evidence, data, whatever it is, to be able to fire you. Otherwise, you're good. And of course, I wasn't at that point.
That's a little scary.
And it's interesting because it's state to state, right? So I know that some states, you can never reach tenure, right? It's this right to work, and they can let you go whenever they feel like it. So, even that layer of certain administrators, good with the folks that are, making decisions, because, you can lose your job just because. So, and it's different. I mean, I'm only speaking about Illinois. But I did not get pink slipped. I didn't lose my job. But what did happen was I was involuntarily moved to another school.
Okay.
So within my district, my first class was, a very diverse group of students, very diverse income levels, all of that. And I had a Black principal. She was amazing. I mean, still a good friend to me now. But then when they transferred me, they transferred me to a predominantly white school.
Nice.
I was the
I heard it coming.
I was the only Black teacher in the building. And even with the students, I mean, this is a small rural school, maybe 195 students. I would say less than 5% of them were students of color, less than 5.
Wow.
So, that's when stuff started hitting the fan, and it was, constantly being questioned about my intelligence. Constantly being questioned about, my classroom management and disciplinary style, and, constantly being questioned about, how are you being collaborative with these veteran teachers? And I'm like, are these veteran teachers being collaborative with this novice teacher? Like, I'm the new one. You all are supposed to be taking me on and showing me around. But I think what took the cake when I decided that it was time to go, and I talk about this story in my dissertation research, because it really hurt me. And I was like, this is just confirmation. But basically, one day I was taking my kids to PE, and it was a second grade class that I was teaching at that time. And, we're in the hallway, and we're walking down to PE, and I dropped them off, in the gym. And there's a Black man that's sitting outside of the office. He's visiting the building. Now, I don't know this man at all, but he's sitting outside of the office. And, I just say, hey, sir, how you doing? Hey, how you doing? Only Black folks in the building. And I go to my class. So then it's time to pick the kids up from PE. So I, walk back to the gym, pick the kids up, and, they're lined up, and we got to stop for a drink of water. So it's about 20 kids, everybody's stopping. 1, 2, 3. That's enough for me. Okay. Next person, next person, next person, And I could see the kids just kind of like snickering. And I was like, I don't know what's going on, but I can just see that there was a little commotion. And then all white students. And then, once everybody got their drink, it was like, okay, because they saw the Black man sitting outside of the office. They noticed him as well. So they're just like snickering and, talking, and, they all get in line. So we show back up to the classroom and they're all just walking in, walking in, walking in. And it was this one little white boy who turned around, and I swear it's like, when you're teaching something in the classroom and nobody gets it, and then it's like that one student that's like, oh, and you see like that brightness, like that excitement, like, oh, I get it, right? I made a connection. This little boy turned around at me and was like, Miss Smith, is he your cousin?
Oh my goodness.
And that's what the kids were talking about, right? And I just looked at him, and then his response was, oh, it's because you're Black.
Wow.
And I was like, I just kind of sat with it because these are kids.
Mm-hmm.
But that like that connection, right? That he made that was just like so significant to him. It just hurt my heart. So I went to my principal, and I was like, white principal, and I was like, this happened. And I said, I really don't feel comfortable about it, and I'm not quite sure, how to address it. And this is layers on top of other things that have happened, parents even coming to me, talking crazy, all this stuff. So this is layered. So when I took it to her and I just basically ran through the whole experience, and her response was, I wonder why he would say something like that. And that was it. And I was just like, if you're wondering, that confirms that I don't need to be here. So I still remember the day the superintendent called the school and was like, I need to speak to Tiffany. And this is at the time that I'm like, I'm quitting. I'm going to teach abroad. I had learned about this teaching abroad through one of my colleagues in my master's program. Literally, the superintendent called and was like, look, we're getting the roster together for next year. I need to know right now, are you staying or leaving? I hadn't started looking for a job. I hadn't done anything, but I was at my 2 years. And he was like, if you're going to do it, don't worry about being pink slip. Don't worry about this. We're going to make sure you got your job. It's like, okay. He's like, I just need a yes right now. Are you going to stay? I said, no, I can't. And I was like, done. But what he did, which was amazing, he asked me not to tell anybody. So he asked me just to hold it, because I was already getting the pushback and the backlash and all that nastiness. And I think he knew, because he was also a Black superintendent over a predominantly white, school district. And he was just like, hold it to yourself. I didn't have anything planned out, didn't have anything. It was just like a leap of faith, and we're going to go with it. So that's when I decided, it's time to go. So went heavy with the, applying, looking for how to apply for teaching experiences abroad. And then, it ended up manifesting. Yeah.
So that was your 2 years. So you didn't even do your 3 years where you could have had a, quote unquote, you tenure, so to speak, right? Where they get rid of you. You didn't even bother to say, I'm going to hang out here. Because that's what a lot of people do. They postpone it, right? I'm going to wait till I retire. I'm going to wait till, I can get my 3 years in, and that way they can't get rid of me. And then maybe I can go somewhere else. You were just like, I am out. Like my shirt, I'm out.
And I think that's the thing, like, stay for what? Right? Like and don't forget, I'm living in my mom's basement. Can't afford nothing. I'm dealing with all this BS at work. I didn't see it as a school thing. I started to see it as a profession thing, right? Yeah. Like exactly what you were saying before we started recording. I've invested 6 years, $70,000, $80,000 in debt into this profession, where now, and this is the way that I always describe it. Like, I come from, a working class / impoverished family. And now, I went to school, tried to check all these boxes and stuff, and I got this degree. And now I'm just a working class / impoverished person with a bachelor's degree and then with a master's degree. So I didn't get that economic upward mobility. I didn't get it. So like the vision, and this is, in retrospect years later, but the vision, a really good friend of mine, when I was trying to decide if I was going to come back here after my PhD, he was like, sometimes it's more of a risk to stay, because you know what staying is. And I did not fit. And this is like specific to the dynamics that I was
Yeah.
put in. I knew
Right.
I did not fit and still don't. And I've seen some of the teachers that I was working with now, like not too long ago, and I'm like,
Mhm.
y'all
Thank
look
God.
y'all look
Like I did the right thing. That was confirmation.
right. And now I'm walking in, call me Dr. Tiffany Lachelle Smith, and y'all just tired still.
Wow. Those of you watching, who can relate? And thanks, I see some comments in here. Who can relate? I know that I can for sure. And it doesn't matter if you're in, the education field or not, because all fields at some point, we've experienced this, right? Where we've had environments where we weren't supported, where we were expected to do the heavy lifting, even though it was not our job or our role, right? Microaggressions galore, so many things happening. But what you said in the beginning, so I'm from Connecticut, right? And of course, as a Black woman from Connecticut, first, people didn't think there were Black people in Connecticut, which is totally ignorant, but that's a very real thing. It was like, who's the boss? Like, oh, that Connecticut. Well, no, that's like, one part of Connecticut, right? There's a lot left. And then the next thing is, okay, are you from New Haven, Bridgeport, or Hartford, right? Because those are the only the Black areas, right?
Okay.
Well, I'm originally from Hartford, but in middle school, my parents moved us to Newington, Connecticut, which is a suburb right outside of Hartford, like maybe 20 minutes. And they moved us there because they didn't have money to put us in private schools, but they wanted us to go into a better school system. So I'm relating to all of this that you're saying because the Hartford school systems at the time were horrible. And I was, getting ready, I was in middle school, so I was going to be getting ready to go into high school. And my parents were adamant that I did not go into Weaver High School at the time that was near where we were. So in the midst of middle school, I think it was 7th grade, they moved me from a predominantly Black neighborhood to a predominantly white neighborhood where literally I was the only Black girl in my middle school. There was like one other Black boy. And then in high school, there was like maybe 15 of us. And the only reason it was 15 of us is because some of them got bussed in through a program called Project Concern, where they bust inner city kids into these white suburban high schools. Girl, yes. So I can relate to everything, right? That you're saying, because I had to do this shift now of being with, Black folks and then all white folks who they weren't racist. They were really, truly just ignorant.
Yeah.
Like they didn't know anything about Black people. They were actually really nice. Like I got invited to like all the sleepovers. I was like the new kid. Like everybody wanted to know me. But it was like, oh, do all Black people do that? Like I would write something. Oh, do all Black people write? And it was like, what the?
Goodness.
What in the Mayberry did I just get myself into? And so they were like genuinely curious because they just had never been around Black people. And then though, of course, in my neighborhood, that was a whole different thing because we were the only Black family. And so there were things that to this day, I don't even know what my parents went through, with some of the neighbors. Because they weren't used to Black folks being there. So that, all in all sides. And talk about education, girl. I'll never forget this. So I had one teacher in, this was in history class. And, to this day, it still sits with me that we were talking about slavery, of course, because, of course. I'm the only Black kid in this class. Like I said, this was in high school at the time. And, one of the few in the school. And none of the other Black kids were ever in my class because I was in like all of the, I mean, yeah, you did really well. So I was in all of the great classes, I guess, not honors per se, but I was where they weren't in the honors class. So I would be like the only one. And so she was talking about slavery and she was just like, well, slavery was, it wasn't like good, but it wasn't bad either, because slaves, they had food, and they had shelter, and they were content.
OMG.
And I'm sitting there as the only Black student, feeling like I have to represent my race,
Exactly.
but feeling totally emotional because I know she just told a bold-faced lie. And even though I'm here with all these white people, I knew my history because my dad is from Atlanta. They made sure I knew my history. I knew Jim Crow, right? I knew, a lot of the things that happened. I went on to go to Howard because, like you, I was like, I can't be here. I had to escape. I didn't care where I went. I was just getting the hell out of Connecticut. And I was like, HBCU all the way. It was just a matter of which HBCU I was going to. But she said this, and I'm sitting there like, do I say something? What do I say? How do I say something without cursing this woman out? Like all of these thoughts going through my head at the same time. And I'm like, where the hell did they get these teachers? Like, how does she not know that this is not true? And I just sat there. And I just said nothing because I was so afraid if I said something, I was legit going to curse this woman out and start crying at the same time. I'm a Pisces. So waterworks were going to start coming. I'm going to start cursing, screaming. And I was just like, I can't do that to my mama. I can't do that. So I'm just going to sit here. But I told my mother, and I was just like, I got to get the hell up out of here. I can't be with these people. Like, what are they talking about? Never forget that.
Yeah.
And so that was my trajectory in terms of getting out, in terms of I got to leave Connecticut. I'm going to DC. I'm going to Howard University, the best HBCU. There's going to be a lot of people like, what? No, one of the best. And so I totally understand that whole, journey in the education system. It was, and moving for a better education. And that was the education that I got.
Yeah. It's interesting, like the way that you're describing that moment. It's the epitome of microaggressions. And that one was macro. I'll be honest. That's not even micro, but it's multiple experiences like that when you can't, right? Oftentimes you can't advocate for yourself because you advocating for yourself means that you're showing up for your people. And when you show up for your people, then you're really opening up. Like, imagine the class asking you questions about slavery and Blackness. And the funniest thing is, I mean, I'm thinking about it like from place and time of where I am now. Like this conversation, we're talking about America. We're not even talking about abroad, right? Like these interactions where you're saying white people had never seen Black people or engaged with Black people. Like, come on now.
I mean, it wasn't the 60s. It wasn't the 70s. We're talking 90s.
Exactly. But I mean, unfortunately, even in 2023, that narrative still exists where you don't have white people that have engaged or been in the same intimate space with somebody that looks different from them.
Well, it kind of opens up the conversation to something that Ava Laura and I used to host a show called Boo to Boom way back in the day, right? A couple of years ago. And during one of our episodes, we had someone on, and I remember saying because I said this to my kids first, and then I said it again on the show, that we are still having Black first, right? Like here we are in whatever year we were in, 2020, whatever it was. And we were still having Black first, and we're still going through Black first, right? The first Black woman to do this, first Black man to do that. So what are we, when we hear this whole term of, slavery was so long ago, was it really, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
When we hear that, racism was like, we don't do that anymore. Really? Let's really look at this and take a real good.
Well, we all know that's not true. We just lived through it again on a wider scale. So if we tried to ignore it, we had 4 years.
Exactly.
So yeah,
the unfortunate part about it, and I think this is the thing as far as like leaving the state. One of how do I say it? Like, one of the biggest shifts, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe even like contradictions or kind of growing into my experience. Like much of my work looks at intersectionality and specifically like our identities and
Mm-hmm.
how our identities intersect with our experiences. So, I mean, just imagining, right? I'll speak for myself. In the States, I'm a Black woman, from a working class, semi
Mm-hmm.
impoverished background. I'm first gen, I'm first gen everything, but it's not until I left America, right, that identities that are so salient to who we are, like finally came to the surface. Like when I'm outside of America, I'm American, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I'm outside of
Yes.
America, I'm an English speaker. When I'm
Yes.
outside of America, it's like, how do you say it? My English is of a different accent than
Mm-hmm.
other ways that other accents of English. I'm not Black, right? My
Mm-hmm.
my passport is blue. So
Mm-hmm.
my passport trumps my race,
Yes.
right? The way that I speak trumps somebody else's other accent. So it's like, oh my goodness, just I mean, it started in Casablanca where it was, it could be a room full of people speaking in English. And I
Mm-hmm.
would literally have parents say, Miss Tiffany, your English is the only English that I understand. And,
Wow.
and you can't tell me that I'm not speaking the same language as everybody in this room.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the accent that has like this. I mean, there's this whole concept called accent reduction, where they're paying people to teach them how to flatten the way that they talk. Like outside of America, my identity has completely shifted. And
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes, I mean, I'm gonna be honest, I am the only Black woman in a room, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the room now is people from Syria, from Jordan, from
Mm-hmm.
Lebanon, from Uganda, from all of these countries. It's still very diverse, but it's everything that makes us different,
Wow.
that brings us together, right? But it's amazing. Like I like being different here because
Mm-hmm.
it's like a conversation
It's
starter.
a different kind of different, though.
When somebody from here asks you where you from, I'm like, let me tell you. When somebody from America asks me where I'm from, I'm like, you know what? We're not doing this because I had in Minnesota, I had folks. Okay, but where's your grandparents from? And where is that?
Mm-hmm.
No, where are your parents from? And then where are your grandparents? You will not do this to me in America, But in overseas, it's just like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, America. Oh, wow, you're welcome. This, and this. Then you get preferential treatment. Like,
I was
yes,
I was just about to say it. I mean, and we've said it, we so many of our guests have said it, and I hear it over and over again. And I experienced it myself that we do. Like we get the Black privilege now, when we're the American privilege, when we're outside of America. And I think it's so sad, just sharing my story and your story and countless other
yeah,
stories, right? People watching now, people who will watch later, who can relate in their own way. How many of us have those experiences? We feel so small. You know what I mean? We feel so
absolutely.
insignificant. We feel so trapped, right? And just leaving and going to another country, all of that shifts. You don't change, right? You're still the same person, but literally just going to a different environment shifts that reality, shifts your perspective, shifts the way that you see yourself and the way that other people experience you. And
Absolutely.
how many people will never have that experience just because they will stay trapped in whatever bubble they're in?
Ooh. See, you're speaking gold because oftentimes we think of ourselves based on the way that people think of us. So
Mhm.
in the States, because we have the news and every single thing that's going on, whether it's directly or indirectly, we oftentimes embody, the narrative about Black Americans in the States, which, oftentimes we don't like ourselves.
Yeah.
But in another country, when you get this, and I'm not even just going to say preferential. If you have people who are curious about you,
Mm-hmm.
you have people that praise you or want to know more about you, or, they're speaking to you. You start to like yourself more, like, oh, I didn't know, right? I didn't know I was something, until I left. And the classroom is, I mean, of course, just, my experience in education, the classroom is the best space for that because, you're dealing with students, you're dealing with parents, you're dealing with colleagues, you're dealing with admin. Like, it's this ecosystem of people. And most of the time when I've had issues, it was with white Americans, white folks from other Western countries, and especially like in places where the majority are brown, like here, we are preferred over other folks. But it's beautiful because you get to do that. Mirror work looks different. It looks completely different.
Wow. I love that. So what's interesting about your work too is that you've had your own personal experience, right? And then you've also done the research, right, and getting your PhD, even though specifically in the education field. But can you talk about that a little? Because you already said some things that I'm like, I never heard that before. I didn't know that about, the education system. And I'm actually dealing with that now. Like, even though I'm still in the DC area, shifting counties, so coming from predominantly Black Prince George's County and moving to more diverse Black, Latino, white in Montgomery County. And when I tell you the school systems are night and day, I am 20 minutes from where I was. I just moved to a different county. And we talking about Title I schools, free aftercare, free breakfast, free lunch, free everything. And I'm like, we are 20 minutes away from where we just were. And it's like a whole new world and opportunities, teaching yoga in the class. I said, what?
Yeah. Absolutely.
In Prince George's County, for those of you who know the DC area, DMV, this is one of the wealthiest Black counties in the country. And the education system sucks. I mean, I have never.
It sucks for some. For some.
It sucks for many in public schools. Like, I've never seen like a whole. I mean, I'm not even going to talk about the fallout, with the principal and the people that work there that really just seem like they just don't care. So it's not even lack of resources. It's, it's the people, it's the environment, it's the mindsets, that are going on. But it's literally night and day in terms of the education now that we're seeing. But yeah, can you talk about that a little bit? Because I was shocked.
Yeah. So I'll go all the way back, and one of the statistics that I love referring to because it kind of brings in this idea of how much of an issue this is. But the last time I checked, it was statistics from the 2017-18 school year that basically reported that out of the 3.8 million U.S. teachers in the profession, only 6.7% were Black. Right. So that's about 250,000. So when it comes to my study and my own experience, I'll say that what you'll find is, although the numbers are low, right? That's one thing. There's a low proportion of Black Black teachers in the system because, I mean, even when it comes to Black, it's a large box. It's a complex box. It's a box that's filled with anything that's not, white, anything that's not Asian, anything that's not, so it's complex. I'll just label it as that. So that's one thing. The lack of proportion of Black teachers. So when you look at policies, you will find these things like, looking at turnover first. So basically, I'll describe it like that. There's teacher turnover, which basically talks about teacher attrition, why teachers are leaving, and teacher migration, why teachers are migrating. So you'll have teacher attrition. They leave the system. They leave temporarily. They could or may not come back. And teacher migration, like you leave from one school and you go to another school. So teacher migration doesn't impact the statistics. So very few scholars look at teacher migration. A lot of scholars look at teacher attrition. Why are teachers leaving? So when you're looking at these teachers who are leaving, the biggest question is, let's find the factors. Why are teachers leaving? So you'll find things like scholars will say, teachers are not involved in school district policy making. So, that's one thing that they're dissatisfied about. Other scholars will say, well, it's the salary, that's what they're dissatisfied about. Others will say, what else? It's like these different factors of dissatisfaction. And I have to be honest, it's been a while since I opened up all the scholarship. But and all of this is true, right? Like all of these factors as far as why teachers are leaving. Resources, access to school resources. There's a list of things. And that's what goes back to that, within the first 4 years, Ingersoll basically said within the first 4 years, that's when you got to catch them because they're either going to stay or go. So when I started to look at these factors, I'm like, yeah, but we can't come in the conversation from here because this education system has been in existence since, oh goodness, I don't remember the year, but just kind of taking it back, before this formalized schooling, there's Black scholars, right? That are like, let's not talk about what's happening modern day. Let's talk back to when schools were segregated. So looking at this policy, right? Brown versus Board of Education. Scholars, Black scholars in particular, talk about the unintended consequences of Brown v. Board, which is basically when this educational reform came that segregated schools are now illegal. We're going to integrate all of these Black students into white schools, which basically meant Black teachers lost their jobs. So there are statistics out there that's like, before 1954, there were, 82,000 teachers responsible for teaching America's 8 million Black students, right? Segregation. We had our own schools. After 1954, you see 37,000 teachers lost their jobs. Add these thousands, and you're looking at particular states as well, where exactly what you're saying with Howard. We had to even create Black higher education institutions to even get teaching credentials, right? So it's very complex, but there's still these two bodies that say Black teachers were dismissed as an unintended consequence of Brown. So we can't look at 250,000 in 2017 and be like, oh, we're just leaving because. It's like, no, we were pushed out way before. And now it's like everybody's talking about this dissatisfaction. All of that is true. But basically, when I decided to leave the American profession, right? This whole idea of teacher migration, I didn't leave the profession. So I don't fit into this teacher attrition because I didn't leave teaching. I left America to teach somewhere else. So I'm like, how do we start to look at this teacher migration, but expand it into international? Because when I was here in Abu Dhabi in 2013, Essence wrote an article saying Black women are leaving to this country in droves, are moving to this country in droves, and was talking about the UAE. Like, it was so many of us here.
And a lot of teachers, because I think, we've interviewed some teachers. It's the same thing. They left, the American school system and went to teach in UAE.
And I'm not saying UAE is the only place that Black American teachers are going to. The UAE experienced their own educational reform in 2010, and they were looking for brain drain, looking for the best and brightest from these other countries to come here and teach. And a lot of Black Americans took that on, which put another dent in the U.S. education system, with teachers. So with my study, because of my own experience, I was like, well, let me interview some of these, Black American teachers that are here and, kind of find out if the reason that they left are similar to the reason, that I left. But I have, oh my God, and I call them life historians, but there's one that comes in particular because you said PG County. She left PG County to come over here and teach, right? So my study basically looks at their life experiences in like categories. So, their education experience, their experience getting their teaching credentials, their experience teaching in the States, and then their experience teaching here. So essentially what they're doing is comparing teaching in the UAE to teaching in the States. And
Absolutely.
it is all, I came up with this theory called affective turnover because it's
Mhm.
emotion, right? It's this idea
Mhm.
of I'm tired, I'm burned out, I'm exhausted. I mean, you have these stories of like one particular life historian talking about, same thing, first gen everything, got into the
Mhm.
profession, bought a house, right? I'm supposed to
Yep.
be in this middle class lifestyle.
Right.
How do I represent that? First thing I'm gonna do is buy a house. She was offered an adjustable rate mortgage. So now
Mhm.
she has to pick up another job just to be able to afford
Wow.
her mortgage, right? So now not only is she teaching, she's also working these additional jobs. She's having issues in her personal life. She has, I mean, even like the other mothering, right? The thing about Black teachers specifically who are working in counties,
Absolutely.
we don't just show up as teachers. We show up as
Correct.
other people, right? So when
Social
these
workers, everything. Because as a
exactly,
former social worker, it was like y'all are doing everybody's jobs. Like why?
yeah.
It's
And
the
when the
same thing with
kids,
social work. We were doing everybody's jobs.
right, and when the kids are having issues, there
Yep.
is this, it's not even an assumption. It's almost like this this hidden like expectation, right?
Mhm.
White teachers will look at you like show problem. These your people. That kid is
Mhm.
your problem. And you have kids that come
Mhm.
from these like unstable homes. I mean, some of the life historians talked about, kids being abused or, kids being raised by single fathers, which is a whole new thing for me. Like the mothers are out. So a lot of these female teachers would
I
show up
know
as
about
these
that.
kids' moms, pick them up on
Yep.
the weekends, take them out. So it's like that complex, and this is why I call it intersectional, because it is that identity of the self, right? Black,
Mhm.
American, woman, male, whatever. And then you're intersecting that with the profession. It's still the salary. It's still, I mean, another life historian, New Orleans, he said, and I will never forget this because it just makes my skin just, he's like, out of the, 8 years. And these are folks who were in the States for like 8, 10 years, been over here, 8, 10 years. But he was like, yeah, and he talks so normal. Yeah, when I was teaching, maybe it was about 6 kid funerals. I went to 3, just like
Wow.
normal, and started like
That
naming
was
them. Yep,
his normal.
this. Right. And it's that cyclical, like,
Oh,
oh, so imagining, right? You got the identity stuff, you got the profession stuff, and then you have the emotions. And it's like, I'm burned out, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I can't do this. And then it's this amazing, thing that we call the internet, and I call it influencers. You just got to
mhm.
know one person who took that leap. And it's like, what? Y'all
Mhm.
doing that over there? Oh, you can
Mhm.
do this. Oh, they pay for that. And it's the
Yeah.
audacity to move on it. It's literally the audacity to move on it. And many of them sold their houses, or rented it out, brought their
Yeah.
families over here. And it was just like, if it work out, it work out. If it don't, we can always go home. So these folks are just
I love it. I
living
love
with a capital L. And I mean, what's the alternative? We know what happens in
it.
the States. We
Yeah.
know. Yeah. So
No, I
it's
love that perspective because so many people stay out of fear, right? And they stay because this is home and
exactly.
their roots. But and that's why we talk to women like you, and we started this podcast because to have the audacity to say, I don't like how I'm living, right? This is not the reality that I want for myself, and I can create a new one. And I'm
Absolutely.
going to decide to move and go over here and have a different experience. And like you said, if I don't like it, I can always come back. But at least I
Yep.
tried something different.
Yep. Yep. And oftentimes it ends up being something beautiful. I'm not saying it's easy, right? Because even, the other part of my study, it basically came out that we over here dealing with the same stuff as far as the education system.
Mhm.
We're over here dealing with the same stuff with the kids, folks cooking the books, folks dealing with behavior problems, folks, it's a
Mhm.
lot of things happening. But the way that a lot of the life historians explained it was, but we're not responsible for this society's kids.
It's true.
You know, like you lose that layer of responsibility. You can just teach. You don't have to do the most, right? Like you could literally just show up and teach, and you are not burdened. That's probably not the best way to say it, but you are no longer like required,
Yeah.
right? To show up
Yeah.
for somebody else's well-being. You have the space and freedom to show up for your own well-being,
Yes.
you know?
Yes.
And that's the
And again,
traveling, that's the safety, that's the
and the reality is, again, we talk about self-care, like the first word in self-care is self. And how are you
man.
supposed to show up for these kids, right? When you can't show up for yourself. And just
Your
like
cup
you
is
said,
empty.
all the things that you have to deal with, right? The school politics, your own emotions, right? Your own debt. Like here you are out here working and doing all this, and you still have this debt, and you still can't live the way that you want. And now you're taking on, and you're somebody else's, not just teacher, but mama. You're dealing with
Exactly.
all of these things, and you
Exactly.
can't even help yourself.
Exactly.
Right. So we're nearing towards the end. We have about 5 more minutes left. I would love to hear, Dr. Tiffany, some of your, what are some of the bonuses of moving outside? I mean, I think we've talked a lot about the education system and different things that you've experienced and why you left a toxic environment. But now that you are in this new environment, what are some of the benefits that come along with that?
Ooh, that's a challenge. It's a challenge because, I've made a lifestyle of this, right? And I can't quite put my finger on it. So like right now, I'm in love, and it's also the stage that I'm in as well because I'm 37. I just finished up this intense 6-year experience with, being in the PhD program. And one of the things that I have is the most beautiful apartment, right? So I'm on the 19th floor. I'm overlooking the mountains in my bedroom. I'm overlooking the sea in this room. And I just want to come home after work. I just want to come home. I want to do my own thing. I want to write books and I want to, show up for speaking engagements. I'm in that space now where I want to serve, right? So I guess the benefit is that I have the space, I have the financial stability, I have a great sense of mental health, well-being. I'm meditating, I'm open, but I'm also in that space of like ridding a lot of the things that the toxic things that I experienced, being home again. So I think the benefit is just like you get to build a relationship with you. And at this point, I'm wanting to open my life up, create and design my own family. I want to get married. I want to have kids. Even the job that I'm in right now, I love it. I'm outside of the classroom. This is my first experience. And that's the thing with educators as well. We always trying to get out the classroom. I got out the classroom. And now I'm just in this space of like, why not? What else? It's how do you call the dot, 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 the ellipsis? I could do whatever I want to do. And
Yeah.
now it's like, now I got to get back to the imagination. Well, what do you want to do, Tiffany? So yeah, I think, aside from, I've said it before, when it comes to these teaching positions abroad, yes, many times the package is lucrative. You get your annual flights, you get your housing provided, you get, your retirement in the sum of like a severance pay when you leave. You meet amazing people. Like as you get out into the world, you find that it actually gets smaller. But I think those are first, and I hate to say it, I've normalized those things. And now I'm in the space of just like, how can I start to serve other people who are in that space of like, I want to do something different and show up as that example and, the guide and all those things. So the benefit is being able to show up in service and
Yeah.
have the intellectual and mental space, to do it.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah. And so many people. I mean, the conversation, I'm looking at the comments over here. Oh my goodness. But
Yeah, I didn't know if we wanted to address that or
oh
not.
my God. Yeah. Some of them that agree.
No, say it. What was it?
Over here, he taught in South Korea. And, he was a teacher for 30 years. And he's like, I absolutely agree. He said, you can't save those communities, save yourself. We got somebody over here talking about abandoning America for a more luxurious lifestyle, and leaving the community. There's a whole, I'm loving this.
I can't see the comments. I
Okay,
can't
so
see.
I'll pull up some of them. I will pull up some of them. I won't pull up them all of them. So I'm not just picking on certain folks. I'm just going to pull up some of them randomly. So first we have one here. I'll show from Midwife Money Moves. I'm loving this conversation. Thank you for this platform. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you. And then we have a comment here. As a researcher, I'm just going to put.
Oh, teacher. He was saying as a teacher for 30 years.
Oh, as a teacher, sorry. As a teacher for 30 years. And then he said, I agree.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to pull up the one negative. It's abandoned America for luxury life in country far away from the suffering people. For how disappointing. But then we had to come back, right? So
no,
let me
but
get the comeback. And I'm going to let you respond. I'm going to let you respond, but let me get the comeback. Man, the community can't say, we can't save the community is what he said in response. And he said, save yourself. So now I'm going to go ahead and pass. And then we have one more that said, how was it teaching in South Korea? So I'm going to go ahead and let Dr. Smith respond to that.
But before that, though, what I do want to say that I love is that, I'm okay with the negatives and the positives, right? Because it's opening up for a wider discussion. And again, it's providing alternatives and options that some people didn't even know they had, right? They're stuck here and they're thinking this is how it is. And they have to stay in education. They got to get their years in. They need to retire. They can't go out into a different field. They don't even know that they can leave and go to another country and teach and actually be more valued. They're still going to have problems, but they can live a better lifestyle and be more valued. They don't even know that. And so I'm loving this conversation over here because we need to have more of these conversations that you get to create the life that you want. You don't have to stay stuck.
Okay. One more negative, and then I'm going to go to the last positive.
Well, hold on. Wait. I want to say something.
I'll let you go ahead and respond.
My dear Yusuf, who came with violence. No, I think the biggest thing, because
that was the other one.
Okay.
No, let me go ahead and make sure we're calling out the right person.
Right. Sorry. My dear Mr. Frosty 760. Okay. Please don't stand by. Oh, he came with violence on purpose. Anyway, so when I decided to move to Casablanca, right, before all of this stuff, so this is back in 2011, I believe, 2011. Exactly what he's saying, my uncle had brought that to me. And he was basically like, Tiff, why would you leave America and go teach some other kids when our kids need you? Our kids need you. Our kids need you. And I'm like, absolutely, I completely agree. But what our kids need is so much bigger than me. It's a systemic issue that is not only manifested in education, it's manifested across every single industry in the States. You cannot look at one person and say, you need to be this sacrificial lamb because we need you in the classroom. No, we need to reform education so that what it was meant to do, because this system is working exactly like it's meant to work. Exactly what you said, Ava Laura, how you can go 20 minutes from one school to the next and you see these vast differences in the quality of education. How does that make sense? And how do you justify somebody being part of this, signing up to be part of it? I swear, I remember when COVID was happening, it was so beautiful. I'm going to be very honest. It was so beautiful because you're talking about teachers who have invested in the education system for, 20, almost 30 years on social media, packing up their classrooms because they can no longer deal with what is required to be able to show up as a teacher that cares for the students, that, like you said, Ava Laura, has something pouring over their cup and they're not in drought. Like, it's a systemic issue. And people are more than welcome to say what they want. Abandon, luxury. my luxury ain't the luxury that folks are really living here. I'm just comfortable. But it's really one of those things where it's like, look, Mr. Smith, I forgot his name, Mr. Ivy, whoever, if you're comfortable in the state, if you're able to do exactly what you want to do, your life is designed that you're showing up in servitude, your job is amazing. You do what you do, because I'm not talking to you. Who I am talking to are the people, specifically the educators, who truly care about themselves. The only way I can help somebody else is if I'm whole, and being in a particular system that takes and just completely dries me out. What do I have to give to anybody else? So, like I said, the same teachers that gave me an experience when I decided to leave, I saw them not too long ago, and I'm like, you look tired. And I am so glad that I went somewhere else. I'm not sacrificing me. I am good. So, I mean, at this point, I'm the education K through 12 system, but shoot, I look, and that was
I am not sacrificing.
Somebody out there, share this stream and put you lying.
Let me tell you something. We about to change the whole name of this. I am not sacrificing me, leaving toxic education system. That's really what this needs to be called right now, because Tiffany done gave y'all the roadmap. Okay, if you are a teacher, ever been a teacher in the education system, principal, school counselor, whatever, she has given you a roadmap. So for those, who, you talked about some of the benefits, you talked about, your own personal journey while you did it, you talked about some of your research, for the teachers out there, for the educators, for the school counselors, for people who are a part of the American school system, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, so I'll be very honest, and not all of us. I mean, there's a lot of people out here talking about moving abroad. You got your Black Sits, you got your Black travel movement, you got all this stuff. There is a huge difference between travel and living abroad. And I will say that I am not an advocate for, asking all Black teachers to leave America. That's not my mission at all. My mission is restoration and making sure that the years that these, and specifically I don't want to just limit myself to Black teachers. And that's one of the shifts that I'm experiencing now, because, it's a systemic issue, like I said. So we need to start creating, whether it's a professional study abroad where teachers are able to just leave temporarily and go experience something different, right? Not a 2-week retreat, because I know that does have some, ability to get you together, but like something like get out of the state, get out of your home space, right? Go, and I don't want to say suffer, but, like living in Casablanca, I didn't speak French and I did not speak Arabic. I only had English. So having to speak with your hands and having to, feel connection off of a smile, having to go to the grocery store and figure out what is this fruit, because I've never seen it in my life. Those are the things that, just build you into a whole different person. The life experience of having to navigate a strange space and get lost and find something amazing, right? So I know, especially when it comes to folks that, have never left the States, you have to do it in phases. It's not just pick somebody up, put them in the country and survive. For some, right? It may work. Me, I didn't have anybody abroad. I just, kind of stuck with it. But I do believe in restoration. So I'm toying with this idea of the Academy of Retention and Restoration, and using this professional study abroad as an opportunity to restore teachers. But I also feel like conversations about, I mean, let's be honest, we're not in the age anymore where, teachers will come into the system and retire after 35 years. We're not doing that anymore. So burnout, in my mind, is inevitable. You are going to burn out of the classroom. So my thing is, when teachers come in, how do we start to, make it mandatory that we create these plans for them to graduate to the next level? So your in the classroom experience is more of you're gaining this, understanding of the profession, right? You're learning students, you're learning management skills, you're learning parents, you're learning problem solving, and all of that information. If you leave that in the classroom for 15 years, it is dead information. It is only for those students that have access to it. That amazing teacher needs to go up. And whether it's a counselor, teaching teachers, whether it's professional development, whether it's someone into administration, whether it's someone into policy, whether it's someone, teaching abroad, like I'm in that space of you are going to burn out. And I say 10 years. I don't have the numbers. I can't, quote that. But after about 10 years in the classroom specifically, you are going to burn out. And at that point, you got to find a way to pivot. And pivoting does not mean threatening your boss, like I can go waitress and make more money than this. No, you have to be building your career for that next step, right? So whether it's another degree, whether it's going towards something else, teacher exchanges, you got your Fulbrights, you got your higher education, go and be a professor. There's so many education as a profession is huge. It's huge, not the classroom. And unfortunately, specifically when it comes to Black teachers, we're not tapped on for leadership. So if we can find ways to get out of the classroom, stay in the profession, but get out of the classroom, like I think that is so necessary.
Wow. I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at these comments. Jessica over here getting marriage proposals. This is hilarious. But Yusuf says, yes, he agrees with you. He said, you can become a consultant, get your master's or PhD in international education.
Do you have Ava Laura, can you go through and actually click on the comment or no?
No.
Okay. Tell me which one you're looking at.
I'm just reading them because there's a bunch of them. I'm having to scroll up. He also said, try South Korea. The children there are very well behaved. So this is what Yusuf suggests for all of you all in
South Korea. It's a large
proposal, Jessica. Well, if my husband is okay with that, then I can't click on it. If my husband is okay, then I guess we could always use more funds. So
I think that's a first.
That is a first. I do want to read one of the comments here. One of the lessons Oprah, or one of the reasons Oprah started her school in South Africa was because there was too much politics involved with the schools in America. So I wanted to make sure that we put that one up here. And I found
Oprah got backlash for that too. How come she ain't started school in Chicago? Because I want to go somewhere else.
Yes, she did.
Yusuf said he did say try South Korea. The children there are awesome. Get a degree.
I'm sorry, my dear Yusuf. I didn't mean to say anything bad about you. It was the other one.
Get a degree in international education. And then we'll leave the rest. But we will leave the rest. But I appreciate
y'all can go to the comments to see for yourself. It's hilarious.
It's a filter. It's just a filter. You like the Snapchat filter. If I took this filter off, you wouldn't be enticed anymore. You wouldn't even like it.
Listen, I want the filter. Okay, I'm mad that I missed the filter.
Lord help them. Okay.
Oh my goodness.
Thank you all for joining us.
You never know what you're gonna get on Black Women Leave America. I tell you, I am loving this. We're definitely gonna come back. We're going to be doing more live episodes. We love having the interaction real time with you all. Appreciate you all who will be coming on and watching the replay. Please definitely like, share, comment. Let's continue the conversation. I think this is really fascinating. I always love when I learn something new. And I hope that you all learn something new. Tiffany definitely gave us some jewels, definitely gave us some things to think about. But we love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of this episode. Let us know what you learned. Let us know what else you want to hear about. And we'll be back in maybe a week or two.
Yes, we will be back in a couple of weeks, but thank you so much. I just want to say thank you to our guests for coming on. Is it Dr. Tiffany or Dr. Smith? Which you prefer?
Either. Dr. Smith is good. Well, just call me Tiffany. You can call me Tiffany.
Okay. Look, whenever I see a Black person with a doctor, I do not drop that.
Right. You want to respect that, right?
I'm the same way.
I appreciate you being a guest on the show. Please tell everyone where they can find you and find out more information about things that are going on with you. Connect with you as well.
Yeah. So one of the things that I haven't mentioned is I am the host of the podcast Abroad in Education, emphasis around the abroad in education. And Abroad in Education is on a mission to discover roots through conscious conversations about EdPats. And I have coined the term EdPat to describe education expatriates working in schools outside of their home countries. So, if you're interested in learning more about people's experiences abroad, I mean, all of this with, resources about, understanding how to get into this living abroad. I'm going to start a YouTube channel too. But
Now,
you can probably look, that's going to be the big thing. So you can follow me at Abroad in Education Pod on IG, I'm Tiffany Lachelle Smith on LinkedIn, and Dr. Tiffany Lachelle on IG as well. So I look forward to hearing from you all.
awesome. That's exciting. Look forward to seeing that. Thank you all so much for watching. It has been a pleasure. Listen, y'all have made me laugh this morning. I appreciate you all. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with a new topic with a new amazing Black women sharing their journeys. But keep tuning into Black Women Leave America, where sometimes you have to leave in order to find yourself. Enjoy the rest of your day, guys. Bye.
Peace. Thank you. Thank you.